What's good, YouTube? Welcome back to another video. As you see by the title, it is called God's Grace is Sufficient. And the reason why I wanted to make this video, because it's true. And it's one of those situations, you know, I thank God daily for his grace. I thank God for him first and foremost and his grace. And it's one of those situations that it was something that was dealing with me in my spirit, I would want to say, like what God was showing me. So I wanted to just tell y'all it. So we see in the Bible where God talks about his grace is sufficient, and people like wonder, like, what does that mean? It's one of those situations where God would truly, like, let's say, like, he will help you through it. He will see past it. He will have mercy on you. And it's one of those situations that God was showing me that, like, God's been showing me a bunch of grace, but God's also been showing me like how I've been taking advantage of that, if that makes sense. And I'm like, Lord, forgive me. You know, like, I don't mean to take advantage of it. Meaning, like, I'm not sitting here just saying, like, oh, you giving me grace? Okay, I'm going to continue to do this. But then it's like, I may not be thinking that way, but my actions are speaking me doing that way, if that makes sense. So it's one of those situations that, like, God was showing me, like, I need to really tighten up and choose a side and, like, pick one or the other. Are you with him or are you against him? And, you know, I'm with him. And, of course, you have struggles in your life, but God's grace is sufficient, but we shouldn't take advantage of that. For example, we see Paul was talking in, like, what was it, 2 Corinthians 12, and I think it was verse 7. Yeah, he was like, man, he has this thorn in his side. He's like, God, I asked you 3 times to get rid of this. And then God said, my grace is sufficient. So, like, what you can take from that verse right there is just like God is saying, like, hey, when you're going through tough times, understand that God will see you through it, see past it and all that situations, especially if he sees you trying, like he sees that you're truly on the right path with him. Another thing is this though too, God is showing, like, when you're going through tough times, he's looking to see, like, are you relying on his grace or are you just relying on your own strength? And it's one of those situations when you're going through, like, let's say, like, testing, trying times, when you're going through suffering, pain, and you're like, God, help me, like, woe is me, I need help. God's truly looking to see, like, hey, are you relying on you and your strength and for you to get through it? Or are you truly just saying, like, all right, God, your scripture says in 2 Corinthians 12, and I believe 7, your scripture says my grace is sufficient. So God, I'm relying on your grace, and you said it's sufficient for us. So God's really saying, like, he wants you to tell him his word. He wants you to, he knows, but, like, remind him of what he said, what is for us. And it's one of those situations, that's where our faith comes into play and our trust comes into play. Like, do you really trust God and believe in what he said? And if you do, then that's when it's sufficient and he will see you through it all. So I don't know who needs to hear this, but stop relying on yourself and rely on God's grace. And it's one of those situations, don't take advantage of it like I've had, and y'all probably have too. You're like, all right, God's grace is sufficient, so I'm gonna continue doing this. No, that's not the way to do it. You know, it requires true change, and God knows if you're truly trying or not. He sees if you really change for him or not. So I love y'all. Understand, once again, 2 Corinthians 12 and 7, when Paul is talking about, like, he has his thorn on his side, God says his grace is sufficient. So are you relying on yourself or are you relying on God's grace? I love y'all. I'll see y'all in the next one. Peace.
Writing songs just like David, this my new song, songs put the spirit in. Let's go. I don't cross my heart, I'ma move far, farther than I ever been. God gave me words when I couldn't word, let go my mistakes.